He was one of the most beloved entertainers of our time. Hard to believe that John Denver died 25 years ago this week. He looks back at the country boy who took the music world by storm.
Sometimes I wonder, I hope that he wasn't scared, that it all happened pretty quickly for him.
For years, people believed John Denver and Annie had the perfect love story. He even wrote one of the most famous love songs ever for her. But behind the music, their marriage was toxic in ways that most fans never suspected. Annie stayed silent for decades, and when she finally began sharing what really happened, it painted a very different picture from the fairy tale the world believed. What caused their marriage to end? And why did Annie wait so long to tell her side? Join us as we uncover the truth behind John and Annie Denver's relationship. The pretty brunette in blue jeans. Annie Martell met John Denver during her sophomore year at Gustavus Adolphus. Their love story began when a trio of young men came to her campus to perform. One of its members, a clean-cut, bespectacled blonde named John Deutschendorf, who, during his performance, took notice of the pretty brunette. John Henry Deutschendorf Jr. at the time was just a young musician performing at a college in small-town Minnesota who could not stop looking at a girl named Annie Martell in the audience. Annie told People magazine, "I wore blue jeans, a lumberjack shirt, and penny loafers." John later told me he fell in love on the spot. They had their first date a year later. Denver wasted no time proposing to her, but she said no at first. "I changed my mind, so my best friend called John and told him to ask me again," she said. They didn't waste a lot of time after that. They were engaged 9 months later and married June 9, 1967, at First Lutheran Church in St. Peter. Annie Martell was 20 years old. John Deutschendorf was 23. He had already legally changed his name to John Denver, choosing it as a tribute to Denver, Colorado, the city he had fallen in love with. After the wedding, the couple lived in Chicago for a short time and later settled in Edina, Minnesota. Annie had never left Minnesota before John came along. Within a year of marrying him, she was traveling the country as the wife of a musician who was climbing fast. The late 1960s and early 1970s were the years that turned John Denver from a folk singer into a superstar, and Annie was there for all of it. They were living in Edina, Minnesota, when John wrote the songs for his first 3 albums. It was while living in Edina from 1968 to 1971 that John wrote the songs for his first 3 albums, including his first #1 song, "Sunshine on My Shoulders," which he said he wrote on one of those cold, dreary Minnesota late winter days when everything is still gray but spring is happening. Annie was also, from the beginning, his primary creative inspiration. In 1969, less than 2 years after they married, he wrote what would become his first hit as a songwriter, "Leaving on a Jet Plane." The song became a huge hit for Peter, Paul, and Mary, and many believed it to be about a young soldier flying off to serve in Vietnam. However, that was not John's intention. He had written it about the hardship of leaving Annie so often as he went on the road. The song that put her name permanently in the history of American music came in 1974. During a brief separation from Annie, John was skiing in Aspen, Colorado. Overwhelmed by his love for Annie, he composed the song in just 10 minutes while riding a ski lift. The lyrics that came out of those 10 minutes, comparing his love for Annie to a night in the forest, to the mountains in springtime, to a walk in the rain, became one of the most recognizable love songs ever recorded. Annie's song reached #1 in the United Kingdom and #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. It sold close to 2 million copies. It has been covered hundreds of times in the decades since. Annie admitted that she still cries when she hears the song. However, it's important to note that the marriage that inspired one of the most famous love songs in history was already showing its first cracks before the song was even recorded. By the mid-1970s, John Denver was one of the biggest-selling artists in the world. Rocky Mountain High had become an anthem. Take Me Home, Country Roads was everywhere. He was performing to sold-out arenas. He was appearing on television. He was one of the most recognizable people in America. He told people in 1979 that at times he had a really big ego. He also told people that same year, "The best thing about me is that I am some guy's dad and some little gal's dad. When I die, if they say I was Annie's husband and Zachary John and Anna Kate's father, boy, that's enough for me to be remembered by. That's more than enough." The couple had 2 children, a son, Zachary John Denver, and a daughter, Anna Kate Denver, whom they adopted. They could not have biological children. Zachary was born in 1974. Anna Kate was born in 1976. They raised their family in Aspen, Colorado, the mountain town that John had named himself after, and that became the permanent anchor of his life. But the life Annie was living in Aspen was not the life she had grown up expecting. She told the Star Tribune in 1982 she often felt like nothing more than Mrs. John Denver. She had given up the college education which she had started in St. Peter and relocated to Colorado to build a life around her husband's career. She had to watch him leave constantly for tours, for recording sessions, for humanitarian work that took him to countries around the world while she stayed with the children, in the house in Aspen, waiting for him to come home. It all made sense at the beginning. 2 young birds in love, but the excitement soon wore off and was replaced by the heavy feeling of loneliness and detachment. What fame did to the marriage. The story of what actually happened inside the marriage of John Denver and Annie Martell has never been told in a single interview. It has emerged in fragments across decades of careful public statements, and the full picture requires all of those fragments together. In a 1983 interview, John said that his career demands drove them apart. He said his success and his commitment to his work had an effect on Annie's and his relationship, that over the last 4 or 5 or 6 years, they had started drifting away from one another, and part of it had to do with the amount of time they spent not together and the things he got locked into and not being together, and then an inflexibility when they got back together to sort of integrate the other's life into his own. Annie said they were too young and immature to deal with John's sudden success. Those were the official explanations at the time of the divorce. According to Professor of Rock's Adam Reeder, in a 2024 episode of his YouTube series, The Pressures of John's Career, coupled with his extramarital affairs, just drained their relationship. The affairs were the rumor that circulated for years before anyone with direct knowledge of the marriage confirmed them publicly. John Denver, the man who had written Annie's song on a ski lift out of love for his wife, had been unfaithful to her across the later years of their marriage. It happened multiple times and with multiple people. The breakdown of the relationship revealed John's temper. When it got the best of him, it flared violently, leading to abusive behavior. During the process of dividing their property, John nearly choked Annie Martell in a fit of rage. Probably the most infamous incident is when John Denver used a chainsaw to cut the bed they once shared as a couple. He cut it straight in half. The chainsaw incident is the detail that appears most consistently in documented accounts of how the marriage ended. John Denver, in a rage during the property division process, took a chainsaw to the bed where he and Annie had slept together. He cut it in 2. It is a detail that sits completely at odds with the image of the gentle, nature-loving folk singer who wrote about Rocky Mountain highs and the warmth of coming home to the people you love. Annie and John were married for 15 years until their divorce in 1982, following a string of John's extramarital affairs and the singer's pressurizing career schedule. The divorce was finalized in 1982. They had been married since 1967. She was 35 years old when it ended. Annie had confirmed the affairs across various interviews and statements over the years. never using the language of accusation, but also never protecting the mythology of the marriage at the expense of the truth of what had happened inside it. She said fame placed strain on the marriage. But the extramarital affair wasn't the biggest revelation. What was the truth behind the most famous song John sang for Annie, Annie's song, and what it actually was? One thing fans are not aware of is that, despite Annie's song being an international hit and selling almost 2 million copies, the rekindled love it symbolized couldn't save John and Annie's marriage. The song brought them back together for a time. The pressures that had caused the separation were still there when the song's momentum faded. Contrary to popular belief, Annie has also revealed that the song is not actually her favorite John Denver song, the song he wrote specifically for her, the one that put her name in the title, the one that sold 2 million copies and became synonymous with his legacy, is the one she finds most difficult to hear. Her actual favorite is perhaps Love, the duet he recorded with Placido Domingo. She has also been asked many times over the years about the last conversation she had with John Denver before he died. It was just a couple of weeks after her birthday, in the fall of 1997, that Annie would talk to John for the last time. She had thanked him for the flowers he had sent for her birthday, and he went very quiet. He said, "Oh, but Annie, I love you." And she said, "John, I love you too. Have a great trip, and I'll see you when you get back." She didn't get to see him again, and here's why. The plane crash. John Denver had been a licensed pilot since the early 1970s and had logged thousands of hours of flight time across his career. He loved flying the way he loved skiing and the mountains, with a physical intensity that was part of who he was. He had owned multiple aircraft over the years. In 1997, he acquired a Rutan Long EZ, an experimental composite aircraft that was relatively new to him. He had received instruction in it, but had limited hours in that type. On October 12, 1997, he took the Long EZ for a local flight from Monterey Peninsula Airport in California. The plane crashed into Monterey Bay shortly after takeoff. He was the only person on board. He was 53 years old. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation determined that the crash resulted from John's loss of control of the aircraft. A contributing factor was the aircraft's non-standard fuel selector valve placement, which required John to reach behind his left shoulder to operate it. Witnesses on the shore reported seeing the plane pitch nose down before hitting the water. His body was recovered from the bay. The news reached Annie in Aspen. She had spoken to him on the phone just 2 weeks earlier, thanked him for the birthday flowers, told him she loved him, and expected to see him when he got back from his California trip. Annie described the period after his death in terms of grief that did not require explanation. The man who had written a song with her name in the title, who had been her husband for 15 years, who had sent her birthday flowers 2 weeks before he died, was gone. The divorce had not erased what they had been to each other, and his death made that clear. But grief has a way of bringing everything into focus, and for Annie, it sparked a period of quiet reflection. It just wasn't the kind the public expected. What Annie confirmed over the years. Annie Martell Denver has never given a tell-all interview, written a memoir, or appeared on a talk show to describe in detail what the marriage was like, or what the divorce felt like, or what John Denver was really like when the cameras were not there. What she has done is confirm the things that needed confirming. She confirmed that the marriage was damaged by affairs and that fame changed John in ways she had not been prepared for. She also confirmed that they were too young and too inexperienced to handle what celebrity brought. She revealed that she grieved the end of the marriage, even though it was the right thing for both of them. While all those memories carry enough emotional weight, it was the conversation before his death that haunted her the most. She revealed that while the last phone call before his death was a conversation about birthday flowers and love, and a trip from which he was not coming back. She wished she had said more, called him one more time just to hear his voice, and that was the part that made her cry the most. She appeared briefly in the documentary John Denver, Country Boy, in Mobituaries with Mo Rocca, and in A Song's Best Friend, John Denver Remembered. In those appearances, she was always measured, always warm when speaking about John, and always careful about the line between what she was willing to say publicly and what she was keeping for herself. She served as a school commissioner in Aspen and stayed in the town that she and John had built a life in together. She has not remarried and has no public romantic history after John Denver. She is now 79 years old and still lives in Aspen, Colorado. But when someone stays quiet, people rarely do. Fans quickly came up with their own theories, and before long, the rumors were everywhere. So, what were those rumors? And what did Annie really say about them? The rumor she finally put to rest. The rumor that has circulated around John Denver for decades was never really a rumor among people who were close to him or who studied his life in detail. The public just never fully received it, because the image of John Denver was so thoroughly constructed around warmth, gentleness, and natural beauty that the other parts of who he was did not fit the picture. The rumor was that John Denver, the man who wrote the most famous love song of the 1970s for his wife, was unfaithful to that wife. That his temper, which he himself acknowledged in various interviews, produced moments of genuine violence during the breakdown of the marriage. That the chainsaw and the bed were real. That the affairs were real. That the man who sang about Rocky Mountain highs and coming home to the people you love had given the woman he loved serious reasons to leave him. Annie never confirmed it in the way that tabloid journalism requires confirmation. She confirmed it the way a woman who still loved the person she was talking about would confirm it, with enough honesty that the picture was clear, and enough restraint that the dignity of everyone involved was preserved. She told the world that fame placed strain on the marriage. She told the world that he struggled with personal challenges. She told the world that they were too young for what hit them. She told the world that she still cries when she hears the song he wrote for her. And she told the world that the last time she heard his voice, he said he loved her. And she told him she loved him too. That is the full picture of what Annie Martell Denver confirmed about John Denver across 40 years of carefully chosen words. It is a portrait of a marriage that was real, that was damaged, that ended badly in its final stages, and that was also genuinely full of love at its best moments. The two things are both true, and Annie has always known that they are, and she has told the story in a way that honors both, without pretending that the bad parts did not happen. John Denver died with the knowledge that she still loved him. That is not the story of a simple fairy tale. It is the story of two real people who met in a college auditorium in Minnesota in 1966, built a life, had it come apart under the weight of fame and temper and infidelity, and never stopped being the people who had once been willing to see each other for the rest of their lives. Annie is still in Aspen. The John Denver Sanctuary, a public park dedicated to his memory, is there too. She has been present in the life of that memorial since it was established. Which part of this story stayed with you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.